Acts chapter 10. Who's buzzing me? Okay. People telling me what I already know. Here we go. Acts chapter 10. This is a very, I think I mentioned this last week, very pivotal time for the world, actually. Because I had my microphone off. But it's a very pivotal time here in the book of Acts. This is the first occasion of the Gentiles being saved, and this story is going to really come in at a very crucial time. God is, as you probably know from just life in general, God is a timely God. He doesn't do anything until He knows it's the right time. The Bible talks about the time that Christ came. The Bible refers to it in the dispensation of the fullness of times. And that in itself is interesting. There's a pattern that goes with that. The earth was created sometime around 4000 BC. So 4,000 years from Adam, the first Adam, 4,000 years later, the second Adam. Then you have the last book of the Old Testament, Malachi. God doesn't speak a word for 400 years. And 400 years later, here comes God, the Word, to the earth in the form of flesh. And so all kinds of, if you time it from the time of going by twos, you have Adam being brought into the earth, and then 2,000 years later, you have Abraham. 2,000 years later, Christ. Now we're 2,000 years after that. Christ again. Christ the second time. Christ, not the rerun. I don't want to call it the rerun. But Christ the sequel. Well, only this time it's better. And so, but God's timing on this right here will play into when we get to Acts chapter 15. It's very, very important. I can't stress to you how important it is that this story happens at the time it does. Let's go ahead and start reading in verse 1. There was a certain man in Caesarea called Cornelius, a centurion of the band called the Italian band, a devout man, and one that feared God with all his house, which gave much alms to the people and prayed to God always. Now, let me just ask you a question. Okay? If you've read Acts chapter 10, then you know that what happens in this chapter. Do you believe that Cornelius was already saved before Peter comes to his house? It's a deep, That's a deep question. Who says yes? I can guarantee you his name was already written in the book of life. Already was. Because God has a record of everybody who was, is, will be saved. That record was already written before, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Already done. So, you look at Cornelius' life, he's already a devout man. He's already doing what Christians do anyway. He gives money away. he's a soldier, for crying out loud. Soldiers kill people and arrest people and beat them up. But this is not him. And so, I'm not saying the guy's not a sinner. He needed a Savior. But you can already see how God was working in his life. I'll bring my own testimony into this. I've mentioned this before, that even as a little boy, before I ever had much in the way of church, I already believed in God, just as young as I can remember. And as a young boy growing up, I just always saw myself as a Christian. God stepped in when I was 9, led me when I was at Bible camp, and then after that, just trying to live for the Lord. And as a young child, God had saved my mom. God was working on my dad, but it wasn't his time yet. And so anyway, you probably could look back in your life and see how God worked, even at times when you think you were probably the farthest away from God. You knew he was still there. You knew something was going on. And so anyway, it'd be, I don't know if we could say he was saved at this point, but definitely the Holy Spirit is going to fall upon him, and then that's it. So he says in verse 3, he saw in a vision, evidently about the 9th hour of the day, an angel of God coming into him and saying unto him, Cornelius. Now, you just look at the clues here. Here he's getting an angel. He's got his own angel coming to him in a vision. He's getting a vision from God. Verse 4, and when he looked on him, he was afraid and said, What is it, Lord? And he said unto him, Thy prayers and thine alms are come up for a memorial before God. And now send men to Joppa. Now, let me just stop right here, because at times I'm going to work in this idea of, are we saved by works or are we saved by grace? And I'm also going to mention some of the more radical dispensationalists who would tell you that the book of Acts is not where we should get our doctrine anyway. Because they have it in their idea, in their mind, that Peter was sent to this house because Peter's gospel was a works salvation gospel, while Paul's gospel was a grace-only gospel. Two different gospels at two different people's house. But here's one problem they have. Cornelius is not a Jew, and the Bible said that Peter was the gospel preacher to the Jews. Why then was he being sent to a Gentile's house? Okay? None of it makes sense. And they would point to these prayers and alms as being works that this man did to earn his salvation. Again, this, as we read the whole chapter, we're going to find out just how wrong that is. So I'm going to work that in various places through this. Verse 5, and now send men to Joppa and call for one Simon, whose surname is Peter. He lodgeth with one Simon, a tanner, whose house is by the seaside. He shall tell thee what thou oughtest to do. And when the angel which spoke unto Cornelius was departed, he called 2 of his household servants. And wouldn't you like to have 2 servants in your house? Huh? You take just one, huh? Here, clean the bathroom, now clean the kitchen. 2 of his household servants, and a devout soldier of them that waited on him continually. What do you think the soldier was for? Security officer. It's dangerous to walk down a road from one place to another at this time is dangerous, because there are what they used to call highwaymen. And they call them highwaymen. Have you ever heard of the phrase highway robbery? This is highway robbery. And it's the idea that thieves used to hide off behind trees or bushes next to roads where a lot of people travel back and forth. And when they had somebody that they knew nobody else was around, they would jump them, they would rob them of all their things. Sometimes they would beat them, sometimes they would kill them. And but they would get robbed along the road, and you need security. And so Cornelius is thinking about this, and he sends his devout soldier and basically says, guard them with your life. This is very important. Little does Cornelius and the soldier and the two servants realize just how important this is, but it is very important. And when he had declared all these things unto them, he sent them to Joppa. Verse 9 now. Let's see. I guess I could advance the slides here. I'm sorry, John, I'm not going back for you. Just pick it up wherever. All right? Now, verse 9. Now on the morrow, as they went on their journey and drew nigh unto the city, Peter went up upon the housetop to pray about the 6th hour. Now, pay attention to all this. I know I touched on this last week, but I got to thinking about it, and there is a secondary teaching that I derive from Peter's vision that I think is important for future events. So on the morrow, as they went on their journey and drew nigh unto the city, Peter went up upon the housetop to pray about the 6th hour. And he became very hungry and would have eaten, but while they made ready, he fell into a trance. Now we got another vision. And saw, verse 11, saw heaven opened, and a certain vessel descending unto him, as it had been a great sheet knit at the four corners. The four is there for a reason. It's for the gospel. And let down to the earth. Notice what's on this. Wherein were all manner of, let's count, four-footed beasts of the earth, wild beasts, creeping things, fowls of the air. 4. This is the gospel here. And there came a voice to him, Rise, Peter, kill and eat. Now, Peter said, now I don't know about if I would ever say this to God. No. I mean, I don't know what Peter was thinking. Not so, Lord, for I have never eaten anything that is common or unclean.
Was he trying to prove what a good Jew he was?
Maybe he thinks God's testing him. I don't know. But it could be. Peter said, Not so, Lord, for I've never eaten anything that is common or unclean. And I think it's just more Peter being sure more than anything. It's like Samuel being called by God, Samuel, and he gets called like 4 times. The 3rd time he goes into Eli. Eli says, if you hear it again, say, Speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth. And because Eli knew it was God calling him. And so Peter's just trying to be sure here. And which is, and let me just say this, that is a good character trait to have as a Christian. When I surrendered to preach, 16 years old, and I counseled with the preacher Golf at the time, and he believed that it was genuine. But he said, Mike, he said, I just want to give you some advice. You want to be sure. And he said, I would rather God call me 4 times and be sure that I was called than to think that God called me and be wrong. And I'll just simply say this. I won't mention who it was, but there were 2 boys that were a few years younger than me that after I surrendered, then one of them, we had a communion service, and when he took the communion, he felt a little, I don't know, dizzy or something like that. And he went to talk to the preacher and said, I think that was God calling me to preach. And the other guy, he was a few years younger than me. I can't remember how he did it, but he also wanted it. He jumped in on that. I guess they saw I was getting attention or something. I don't know. Needless to say, neither one of them that I know of are in the ministry. And I'm not saying I'm better than they are. God knows I'm not. But it was the simple fact of I listened to what he said. And so it is best to know that God is calling you, or God is speaking to you, or God is teaching you something. It is best to know absolutely for sure that that's what is happening than for you to just accept something just at first jump. Okay, that's it. I'm not going to tempt God at all. Well, you're not tempting God. God's a very patient God. He understands that we don't know what he knows and we can't see what he sees. And so he was patient with Samuel. He was patient here with Peter as well, because he did this thrice. This was done thrice. Well, let me back up a little bit. Peter says, I've never eaten anything that is common or unclean. So it's obvious that there are unclean animals in this group here. And verse 15, the voice spake unto him again the second time, what God hath cleansed, that call not thou common. Now, we know that all of this has to do with, in fact, let me go here. We know that all this has to do with the Gentiles. And what God is showing Peter is the Gentiles, they are sort of regarded as unclean by the Jews. That's actually in the law. But God now, remember, we have a change of the law because we have a high priest who's not coming from the tribe of Levi, he's coming from the tribe of Judah. So it's a new law with a new lawgiver, and everything's different here. And so what used to be common and unclean, according to the Old Testament law, can now be cleaned and be acceptable with God, which is why we as Gentile believers don't believe that God changes the law for us to eat bacon. We believe that with prayer and thanksgiving, God cleanses the food that we eat. He sanctifies it. And so that's part of this as well. And so take a look what I have up here and turn to Genesis 7. I happened upon this several years ago. I don't know how long. It's been a while. But I got to thinking about that story, that the Jews were considered clean because of their dietary restrictions and the washing of hands and the washing of pots and everything they did. They had to wash this, wash that, and so on and so on. And so they were considered clean. The Gentiles were considered unclean because they ate with unwashed hands. Oh, no, that's terrible. And the Gentiles considered unclean. You have 4 types of beasts, 4-footed beasts, wild beasts, creeping things, fowls of the air. This happens 3 times. Well, that's 12 total. Okay, I get that by mathematics. So with the Jews, you're dealing with the 12 tribes. With the Gentiles, the 12 apostles. Now, in Genesis 7, the Lord said unto Noah, come down all, remember, Jesus said, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be at the coming of the Son of Man. The story of Noah and everything about it, you don't want to miss one thing in here because all of it matters. All of it means, Jesus didn't specify what parts of the days of Noah were like the coming of the Son of Man. He said the days of Noah, all of it. So he says, come down all thy house into the ark, for thee have I seen righteous before me in this generation. Now notice how he does this. Of every clean beast, that would represent the Jews. Thou shalt take to thee by 7s, the male and his female. Now I have a question whether or not there was one lonely creature out of the 7 that didn't get a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or as somebody said, they think there were 7 males and 7 females. Okay? Could be. But then, And of the beasts that are not clean, by 2, the male and the female. And consistently in the scriptures, I just have a couple examples here, but Israel is always saved by 7s. So in Daniel 9 is an example. 70 weeks are determined upon thy people, 70. And the holy city, number 1, to finish the transgression. There's 7 things here: to make an end of sins, to make reconciliation for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. 7 things here is going to save Israel at the end of these 70 weeks. Okay? And there, like I say, there are other things, like the high priest going in with the blood and the hyssop, and he sprinkles the ark how many times? 7 times, and that's for perfection and completion and so on, and that is the salvation of the Jews. The Gentiles saved by 2, okay? So in Matthew 22:40, on these 2 commandments, that's the new law now, is love the Lord thy God and love thy neighbor as thyself. On these 2 commandments hang all the law and the prophets. So while Israel is still under 10, we're under 2. Now think about that just for a minute, how that's divided up, 10 and 2. When the 12 spies came back from hunting out Canaan land and searching it out, how were they divided up? 10 and 2. 10 of them said, we can't go in there. They're under the law, 10 commandments. 2 of them said, of course we can go in there. That's our land. That giant's in my house. I want it. I'll kill him for it. And these two guys begged everybody in Israel, please don't turn back on God. Please don't do this. But they did it anyway. And so those who listened to the 10 perished in the wilderness. Those 2 got to go into the promised land. Mark 6:7, he called unto him the 12 and began to send them forth by 2 and 2, and gave them power over unclean spirits. Hosea 6:2 is a prophecy concerning Israel. After 2 days, he will revive us. In the 3rd day, he will raise us up. We shall live in his sight. So the 2 days are the 2,000 years I mentioned a while ago. From Christ the first time to Christ the second time. Luke 13:32, and he said unto them, go ye and tell that fox, behold, I cast out devils, and I do cures today and tomorrow. And the 3rd day I shall be perfected. And what's he referring to? I think he's referring to his second coming, when he finally can anoint Israel and seal them with the Holy Spirit and so on. And so let's go back and read this now in Genesis 7. Of every clean beast, verse 2, thou shalt take to thee by 7s the male and his female, and of the beasts that are not clean by 2 the male and his female. Of the fowls also of the air by 7s, the male and female, to keep seed alive upon the face of all the earth, for yet 7 days, and I will cause it to rain upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. And so in verse 11, in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, the 17th day of the month, the same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened. This is the floods of ungodly men, when the wicked shall come in like a flood. We talked about that the other day. And so you have this ark, which was built by 4 men named Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. It speaks of Christ. And here's what I'm getting at. God's going to save in these last days both of us. Us and the Jews. And, he separates them, but we're still saved the same way. Paul always said, to the Jew first, and also to the Greek. To the Jew first, and also to the Greek. Blindness in part has happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles come in. So, like in Revelation 10, when the 7th trumpet is about to sound, the mystery of God should be finished, as he hath declared to his servants the prophets. And part of the mystery of God is Israel has their blindness removed and are saved, but also the mystery to us is, behold, I show you a mystery, the rapture, the translation. And so all of us saved by Christ, who is the ark, and all of us saved the exact same way, by Christ, inside the ark. Amen. And this nonsense, and again, the radical dispensationalists say, well, Noah was saved by works. He had to build the ark. Well, excuse me for a minute, because in Genesis 6:8, Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord.
Pastor Mike, do you think he used any of the animals to help him build the ark?
Undoubtedly.
Don't you think?
I mean, if you got 2 elephants showing up, hey, why don't you pull these big logs?
Maybe the ones that didn't get on the ark, they had to help make it.
Well, that's kind of mean, isn't it? Yeah. Sorry, we can only take 2. The rest of you guys go home and die. Yeah. Yeah, right. But anyway, that's just something interesting I throw into this because that's what I think is going on here in Genesis 7. Why he put a difference between the clean beast and the unclean. And by the way, this is even before there was a law telling what was clean and what was unclean. God knew they were clean, right? So, let's say that 14 goats come walking up to the ark. 7 are male, 7 are female. Okay? Well, Noah looks at him and says, yeah, there's 14. I guess they go on. And he put them on the ark. Okay? 2 pigs come walking up, male and female. Y'all are unclean. I'm only taking 2 of you. And he lets them go in the ark. Puts them down in the bottom part where the bilge is and all the manure. That was one thing that I read, one of my term papers in Bible college. I was studying the flood. And Dr. Morris said that the bottom level was more than likely where they took all the manure and the droppings and everything from the animals and put it down in there, and it helped settle the ark. You know, you put all the weight down on the bottom, you know, like that means something. Anyway, so let's move on. Acts chapter 10, verse 19. Now, while Peter thought on the vision, the Spirit said unto him, Behold, 3 men seek thee. Arise therefore and get thee down and go with them, doubting nothing, for I have sent them. Then Peter went down to the men which are sent unto him from Cornelius, and said, Behold, I am he whom ye seek. What is the cause wherefore ye are come? And they said, Cornelius the centurion, a just man, and one that feareth God, and of good report among all the nation of the Jews, was warned from God by an holy angel to send for thee into his house, and to hear words of thee. Now, God has already told Peter, if I say it's clean, it's clean. Peter has to get over all the years of his life where he was a Jew being told you don't eat with the Gentiles and you don't go into their house. Now he's got to recompute everything that he's ever been told and every way that he's ever been practiced. He's got to get rid of that. And there's a lesson for all of us there. When we get saved and get right with God, there's a learning curve here that we've got to change our ways of thinking, especially our ways of thinking about lost people. They're lost. They're dead in trespasses and sins. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to live, especially nowadays. And it takes God's people loving them, caring for them, praying for them, and you don't have to worry about judging them. God's already going to judge them, whether they get saved or not. And you let God worry about that part, because I do. I know some pastors that they're just some kind of people that they just would not do well ministering to. Okay, I can't judge them. I don't know what reason. But if somebody comes to me and they say, I really do want to know Christ, I want to be saved, I'm just going to take them for their word and believe them. So anyway, Peter thought on this vision. And then he sees all this and he says, okay, I got to go. Now in verse 23, then called he them in and lodged them. And on the morrow Peter went away with them, and certain brethren from Joppa accompanied him. And the morrow after they entered into Caesarea, and Cornelius waited for them, and called together his kinsmen and near friends. And as Peter was coming in, Cornelius met him, fell down at his feet and worshipped him. But Peter took him up, saying, stand up, I myself am also a man. And as he talked with him, he went in and found many that were come together. So you got a whole house of dirty people, common and unclean, and so on. And he said unto them, you know how that it is an unlawful thing for a man that is a Jew to keep company or come unto one of another nation. But God hath showed me that I should not call any man common or unclean. And just think about the righteousness of that statement. Why is it that some people think that because of their genetic background, they're more righteous and holy than any other genetic background? Okay, why is it that there are white supremacists? I've read their doctrinal statements. They're very bold and brazen about what they believe. If you are black, don't even ask me about Jesus, because you're going to hell. If you are of a different color and a different genetic background than me, then you're not going to be saved. We are the lost tribes of Israel. We are the Caucasian, and we know the Jews came up through the Caucasus Mountains. That's why we're the only ones saved. I've read their stuff. They do say this. Or the Brother Will Fant up in Ohio has dealt with these black Israelites. And he said, these guys are mean. He said, they're dangerous too, because they have it in their mind that God called only the black race to salvation, and that gives them a godly, righteous right to kill any white person they want to, simply because you're not black. And if you're not black, you're not going to heaven. They're very militant about it. Or whether it's Jews boasting that we're the people of God and nobody else can be the people of God. Therefore, we're not interested that Madonna wants to be a student of Kabbalah. Okay? We don't care. She's not one of us, because the real serious Jews say that Kabbalah is only for us Jews. I mean, other people follow it, that's all well and good, but it's not going to do them any good, because it only applies to us. It is their way to heaven. And so there's lots of people that have lots of different views on who can go to heaven and who can't. And a lot of it does fall upon racial lines. But God showed Peter not to call anybody unclean simply because of who they are. Therefore came I unto you because let me ask you a question. Who decided how you were going to be born into this world? God did. God put you either in a black family, a white family, a black and white family, okay, mixed up, or God had you born in Russia, or God had you born in Africa, or God had you born in Alaska, or wherever it is. You didn't decide any of that. Thank God the gospel is for everybody to be saved. Everybody. Now, verse 30. Cornelius said, 4 days ago I was fasting until this hour, and at the 9th hour I prayed in my house, and behold, a man stood before me in bright clothing. Ooh, I would love to see that. Have you ever thought of what it would be like for an angel to come and visit you? You ever thought about that? If you haven't, it's okay. I'm just weird this way. I've thought about it. And I guess it's my nature. I would want to know 100% for sure that it was the right kind of angel. Okay? I mean, who sees angels, right? Joseph Smith does. Ellen White did. Other people. And I don't know. I don't think I'll see one until the rapture, but just in case, I'm going to pick his brain first. He came to him in bright clothing and said, Cornelius, thy prayer is heard, and thine alms are had in remembrance in the sight of God. Send therefore to Joppa, and call hither Simon, whose surname is Peter. He is lodged in the house of one Simon a tanner by the seaside, who, when he cometh, shall speak unto thee. Immediately, therefore, I sent to thee, and thou hast well done that thou art come. Now, therefore, are we all here present before God to hear all things that are commanded thee of God. So they knew who Peter was. They knew that God had sent them. And so Cornelius is welcoming him into his house and saying, we're ready to hear. Okay, now, back to what I was saying a while ago. In verse 34, then Peter opened his mouth and said, of a truth I perceive that God is no respecter of persons, but in every nation. And the Greek word here is ethnos. Do we have a word that sounds like that? Ethnic. That's what it means. That's what the word nation primarily would mean in the Bible. But in every ethnicity or every nation, he that feareth him and worketh righteousness is accepted with him. Now, the wacko dispensationalists, some are not wacko, but they focus on these two words here, worketh righteousness, and say, aha! There it is right there. It's a works salvation for them. Huh? Sure it is. Sure it is. It's taken out of context. And I would say to them, keep reading in that chapter, because they're going to find something that they won't be able to argue against.
Isn't the big control circumcision because the Jews were the only ones that could perform that? No Gentile could perform circumcision.
Now, what was that question again?
Isn't the big control that they wanted to be part of the clan or the tribe was circumcision? Because only rabbis can circumcise. You don't have Gentiles that can perform circumcision.
Not religiously. I don't know why we do it in America to babies born. Doctors are doing it in the hospital, but not for any religious,
I meant back then.
Yeah, back then. Yeah. The Jews were very, very proud of that. And anybody that wasn't, they didn't spend any time with them. They were just goyim. They were trash people.
You couldn't come in the temple.
Nope. Couldn't do anything like that. And here, Leviticus 19:15, you shall do no unrighteousness in judgment. Thou shalt not respect the person of the poor. This is in the law. No person of the poor, nor honor the person of the mighty, but in righteousness shalt thou judge thy neighbor. You know that in every town, every city in America, there is always an elite group. And it doesn't matter, even if it's a small town, there's usually about 10, 15 families that are the top-notch people in that county, and they can get by with stuff that nobody else could get by with. You remember, Chris, you remember when, what was him? He was the former police chief in Festus, Pagano. And when he shot and killed his son-in-law, murdered him, shot him in the back and claimed self-defense. And he was found guilty, But instead of going right to prison right then, his lawyer said, can he wait while we appeal the case? And there was outrage over that because, okay, here's a guy that's got clout and money in Jefferson County, and he's getting by with murder. He gets to stay out of prison because of who he is and what he is and so on. He gets by with murder, and nobody else would, so they changed the law in Missouri and made it retroactive. And a judge said, I want him in prison. When they went to his house, deputies knocked on his door, and he said, well, let me go to the bathroom first. He went in there and blew his head off because he wasn't going to go to prison. Well, guess where he is? Stupid. Sheriff Berger, you remember him? There was a day up here on 141 where you had massage parlors all up and down 141 there outside of Arnold. Okay, where all that trailer park is and stuff like that. And they were not supposed to be operating, but Sheriff Walter Buck Berger was taking money from them and letting them operate. Getting by with stuff like that. And it happens in every county, every place in America. There is corruption like that, that if you're one of these families, or you make so much money, or you are connected with this, then you're part of the elite. I mean, who in here would like to honestly live in Boston, Massachusetts? No, we are way too trashy for them. Okay? I ain't kidding you. There is an elitism there around Harvard and all the stuff that place is crazy. So, that stuff happens. And it's no wonder that our Congress is full of thieves, murderers, child molesters and everything else. And they get by with it because of who they are. Hillary Clinton still got 30,000 emails that are gone, supposedly, and she gets by with it. It's insane. It's because they respect persons. They say, Hillary's dangerous. Well, she is. You know those people, you're going to end up dead. They all will answer for it one of these days. I would hate, and I guess God just made me this way. I went to 2 different Bible colleges. The first one I went to out in Oklahoma, they were all easy going out there, and I got along with everybody out there after my first year. Then I left that and I went to the Bible college that the denomination people go to. And I figured out there that was a place where rich Free Will Baptists sent their sons and daughters to get married to other prominent Free Will Baptist families. It didn't take long for me to figure that out. It didn't take long for me to figure out that some people in that school got away with a lot more than I got away with. I parked in the wrong spot one time and found demerits in my mailbox the next day. Somebody was parked in my spot, so I had to park somewhere else. I got demerits. I was within 3 demerits by the end of that semester of being kicked out. I copped an attitude. I'm like, well, if this is how it's going to be, then fine. And I made it a point to hang around the people that nobody else hung around with. And we got along great, man. We had a good time. But I despised that kind of stuff going on. And anytime I'm around it, I want out. I want out big time. Deuteronomy 1, you shall not respect persons in judgment, but you shall hear the small as well as the great. Talking about judging cases. You shall not be afraid of the face of man, for the judgment is God's, and the cause that is too hard for you, Moses says, bring it unto me, and I will hear it. And I commanded you at that time all the things which you should do. But he says here, you don't respect persons. You don't look at a man and say, I can't go against him. I mean, he'll have guys that'll kill me. That goes on too. Probably in Jefferson County. Deuteronomy 16, thou shalt not wrest, which means twist, judgment. Thou shalt not respect persons, neither take a gift. What's he talking about here? Taking a gift. Or this is not a bribe. This is a gift. I just want Senator Thompson to know that I think he's doing a great job. So I just gave him a gift of a new car, Lincoln Continental. What is that, a $100,000 vehicle now? Yeah, or a Lincoln Navigator. I just wanted to give him, I just wanted him to know, everybody understands that gift perverts judgment. For a gift doth blind the eyes of the wise and pervert the words. Look at that, pervert the words of the righteous. So, even amongst King James only churches and church groups, there are people who have gotten away with long-term adultery, long-term money issues where they're taking more money than what is allotted to them. I'm going to go ahead and say a guy that you probably never heard of, but Jack Hyles, at one time, they called him the king of fundamentalism. And he had a church in Indiana of 30,000 people. He had Bible colleges, he had Christian schools all over the place, and he was a millionaire. A millionaire. And everybody favored him because he was King James, and he was Mr. Soul Winner, but several people reporting that he despised his wife, and he had a long-term affair with a woman that was a secretary at the church, and nobody ever could question him. Nobody could ever accuse him and get away with it because he had too much power and too much control over people. And everybody would say, oh, not him. Oh, surely not him. I mean, God knows that he could never do anything like that. And that kind of stuff goes on. And at the end, after he died, his favorite daughter and her husband ended up taking over the church. Jack Scott was his name, and he was pastor for several years. Now he's in a federal prison for transporting a 15-year-old girl that he was having an affair with across state lines. And hopefully will remain there and have a long prison ministry. But that stuff goes on because there's favoritism. There's the belief that these people can do no wrong. And that is not a healthy position for anybody to be in. You, me, anybody. Automatically assume, oh yeah, he can do wrong. Oh yeah. Okay? Because none of us are above failing. None of us are. Which is why you don't rest judgment and you don't respect persons, because it'll pervert the words of this book. It'll make you change your doctrine. And I believe that a large majority of the people who scream, once saved, always saved, are using it to hide sinful lifestyles that they refuse to give up. And I believe that. I've seen it, and I know it happens. I know it happens. All right. You're not going to get the rest of this tonight. It's good stuff too, man.